Finance Committee meeting of May 11th at 5 p.m. First item, approval of minutes, draft minutes of April 27th, 2021 Finance Committee meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move to postpone to the next meeting because it looks like it's just the agenda. It's not actually minutes. At least what I see in my agenda packet. Page 4 and 5 of the packet's just the agenda.
You are correct, yes, yes. Okay, so we will move to table.
Yeah, I move to postpone to the May 26th meeting.
Okay,
I'm sorry, May 25th meeting.
all right. Yes, all right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? The motion passes. Is there any public appearances for non-agenda items? Pardon? None. Nothing on Zoom. Thank you. Now to item 4, the Finance Director report, Treasurer's report as of February 28th, 2021. I'll turn that over to Misty.
Yeah,
Misty Dodge.
To start with, so the February Treasurer's Report is included in your packet. Again, we are a little delayed, catching up somewhat slowly. That's relatively normal for this time of year. As of the end of February, the big thing to note is that property tax collections at that point had been all collected and all distributed to all of the overlying jurisdictions. So that's why you'll see we only have a couple $1,000s in our tax account. That would be the interest that we earned on that last month. So that's why those balances are quite a bit different than what you would have seen the 2 months prior to that. Other than that, there's no new CD investments, anything like that in February. They'll tell you I did invest some more money with PMA last week, and the interest market continues to be very deflated. So where our interest revenue will continue to be quite a bit lower than what we've seen in the past. But it's the investments that are available to us now, and obviously we don't want to take too many risks because that's not worth whatever increase in interest revenue that we would get. Other than that, things going on in the finance department. So still working through CIP. That document will be released to the public and to council on June 4th. Still trying to figure out what projects need to be prioritized in order to fit within the confines of the financial constraints that we have. Audit is getting wrapped up now. So normal schedule would be the auditors would be here at our next meeting to give our presentation. I am not certain that we're going to hit that. We might have to move that to the first meeting in June instead, as we're still working through some of the audit report items. We'll still hit the deadlines that are there. It's just we're not hitting kind of our goal that we shoot for. And then the American Rescue Plan, that's that additional federal stimulus money that we're expecting. So that money is getting distributed to the entitlement communities today. The city is not an entitlement community, but our money went to the state today, and within the next 30 days, the state will remit our money to us. But there was some additional guidance released yesterday, really focused on the entitlement communities again, but I suspect our rules will be very similar to theirs. So I had a lot of reading to do today, trying to catch up to figure out what the rules are for the program. It'll take a while to digest and really figure out exactly what our plan is going to be. My goal is to kind of digest it myself so that I can share that information with you guys, and then we'll go through a public process to figure out how we want to spend our share of the money. We do have through the end of 2024 to get contracts, and if construction can continue through the end of 2026 is what I saw in the language today. So we have plenty of time. I'm not in a rush necessarily. We're only getting half now. We'll get the other half probably next year. But I think it is important that we are strategic with that funding, make sure we do it in a way that matches the priorities and the gaps that our residents are seeing, so that we don't overlap with other funding that might be available through other sources. So that's a big piece that I'm trying to work through. Yep.
Could you just define entitlement community?
Yeah, so an entitlement community is actually a CDBG phrase. So you have to have a population of 50,000 or more, and then you are entitled to your own CDBG funding. The city's not that big, so our allocation goes through the Dane County, and then it gets allocated from there down.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's all I had for a report, unless there's questions.
Yes, let's open it up for discussion. Questions. Anyone have any questions? Gabriella?
I have one question about the treasurer's report on page 13 of the packet. It's page 8 of the section. For all of the expenditures listed here, the 2020 year-to-date comparable looks like about half as much. And so I'm just curious if maybe those are accidentally January numbers. Because like across all those categories, it's like,
So it won't be January numbers, because it's a formula based on that header, but I can look into why it's so low.
like it's close to 50% for almost everything. So,
Yeah, that's a really good observation. Not all of them, but many of them, yeah. I'll look into that
Okay.
and I'll report back.
thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I do have a question. Anybody else? Okay. My question is, it's going back to page 4 of that general fund as well. Let's see if I can find it. Yes, City of Fitchburg balances per accounting records. Down to, I'll say account 800, Tax Collection Agency Fund. Can you explain that item a little bit? I noticed that there's a $101,681.42 in parentheses. If you could explain that a little bit, and I noticed that there's a note F as well.
Yes, let me get to that page.
Sure.
There it is. So the agency fund, that 800 fund, that is the separate accounting that we use to keep track of all of those property tax collections. So the money, when we collect it from the property taxpayers, goes into that fund. And then on January 15th and February 20th, we settle that money out to all of the overlying jurisdictions, including ourselves. So it's really just kind of a pass-through account until we hit that settlement date. It is negative this time of year because we have to settle on personal property, and including postponed personal property as of February, even though we haven't gotten that back yet. So we settled it out with everybody now, and then we'll get reimbursed for that from the county in August when that final settlement happens.
I see. Okay. Very good. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, let's move on to item 5 on the agenda, review of bills. First item, detailed review of checks for $10,000 and above, April 16th through the 30th, 2021, totaling $376,806.33. Is there any questions? I guess hearing none, we'll move on. Next item under review of bills, detailed review of all checks issued, check number 122061-122-107, April 16th through the 30th, 2021, totaling $444,450.67. Is there any questions? Gabriella?
Page 46 of the packet, it's page 4 of this section. There's a line item Larson portrait design for a retirement portrait. Can I ask what that is?
Absolutely. So in the police department, we had an officer retire, and whenever that happens, they get a formal picture taken, and then it's displayed down in the department.
Okay. Awesome, thanks.
Any other questions? Hearing none, moving on to item 5C, detailed review of ACH payments for $10,000 and above for the period of April 1st through the 30th, 2021, totaling $718,381.56. Are there any questions? Hearing none, let's move on to item 5D, detailed review of all ACH payments, April 1st through the 30th, 2021, totaling $730,250.34. Are there any questions? Hearing none. Next item, 5E, detailed review of P-card transactions for $10,000 and above for the cycle ending April 6, 2021. Total dollar amount $98,233.18. Are there any questions? Hearing none. The next item for under review of bills, 5F, review of P-card transactions for the cycle ending April 6, 2021, total $197,193.10. Any questions? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item under action items. And 6A, it's road construction update. Do we have somebody here to?
Could skip that for now and come back to it.
Okay.
That would be great.
All right.
Otherwise, if he's not able to join us, we'll just postpone it to the next meeting if that's okay.
Sure, very good. All right, well, we'll move on to the next item, or action item. Action item 6B, may I have a motion for Resolution R-68-21, approval to purchase street sweeper in 2021?
I move to approve resolution R-68-21.
Very good.
Approval to purchase street sweeper.
Sure. Very good. We have a approval.
Chair, may I interrupt on this one?
Yes, you may.
This is our first purchase for this committee, so I just wanted to talk about the pre-approval form that's in here for those of you that are either new to the committee or new to watching our committee. So included in the packet, so it would be starting on page 71. It's not formatted especially well when it transfers from the software into here, but you'll see there's that blue background pre-approval request. So anything that costs $25,000 or more that is not an exception outlined within the ordinance needs to have a pre-approval associated with it and then go through Finance Committee and Council and possibly other committees as well. So this form that's in here is the way that we document how we got quotes, what the other quotes were, why we're recommending the particular person, whether it's the low price or if there's another consideration for why we're recommending a different vendor. And then it also, at the bottom of the form, will talk about what account numbers it hits, what the description is, all of that is included in there as well. So this form is a great kind of one-stop shop to learn about all the information for how that purchase, the background information before it was recommended to you guys for approval. So that form should always be in there when we're purchasing. For this particular one, if you look at the form, we are recommending from this vendor, who is the one that provided the last sweeper. From an operational standpoint, it's really helpful to have a sweeper, because we will have two now, having them both be uniform so that the crew can go in and utilize the street sweeper in the same manner, regardless of which unit that they're in. So that's part of the reason that we're recommending that particular brand. And then we're also recommending that we buy a demo unit, which saved us about $28,000 by going that route instead. The crew did test it out. They made sure they felt comfortable with it, that it was still in good shape and still worth the price that's being brought forward.
Okay, very good. Is there any other is there discussion, conversation, questions? Okay. Hearing none, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. The next action item, 6C. May I have a motion for Resolution R-76-21, resolution approving contract with EOR for a stormwater flood study near Cheryl Drive?
I move to approve.
I'd like to add a little bit to this one too, if
Please.
I may. So one of the things I wanted to point out on this one is that there is a ranking system identified on that pre-approval. Claudia in particular in the stormwater utility spent some time putting together that methodology just to try to help the decision makers determine what those priorities are. As we all know, we have limited resources. So this is probably one of the first times that you would have seen that ranking, but we are incorporating that into the CIP document as well, which you'll see next month. So this one in particular, it's a project that is experiencing some flooding, and the vendor, at the beginning of each year, the department sends out an RFQ. So it's similar to a request for proposals or a bid, but it's for quotes instead, because engineering in particular has different areas that are their expertise. So they send that out, and then they generate a list of the different recommended vendors based on their expertise with these different projects and some pricing stuff. So for this particular project, we are recommending EOR, and then there is a budget amendment associated with it as well.
Okay, any questions, discussion? I have one question. It states that this project was proposed in 2022, and it's a CIP. So how does that impact, if we're moving it into 2021, that's correct? Am I reading?
Yep.
And I'm sure you explained this, but just for me to understand, how does that impact our budget this year if we're moving it in? It's, as it's explained here, we're pulling money from elsewhere to make up that difference?
Correct. So for 2021, we would be looking at doing the design or the study part of it. You know, what are our options? What would the cost be associated with those options? That's the project that's in front of you now for 2021.
Right.
And the budget amendment is to shift funding from other areas in the stormwater budget to pay for that. And the areas that we're pulling from are really in line with what this project is too. Generally, it would be for smaller dollar projects, like some more quick fix, where this is a bigger stormwater issue. So that's why it's a little bit different. But in general, it's in line with what that money would be for. But you have a great point. As of right now, there is no construction money in the plan for 2022. You will see it, hopefully, when the CIP comes out, and it's something that this council will be able to vote on, but they haven't yet. So to an extent, you are tying yourself to continuing that project in 2022. We just don't know what that will be until we complete this feasibility process.
Good. Any additional questions, discussion? Hearing none, let's put it to the resolution to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution passes. Okay. On to the next action item, and that is action item 6D, if I have my everything lined up. And then may I have a motion for Resolution R-88-21, amending the 2021 Refuge and Recycling Fund budget, fencing and gates at the recycling center.
I move to accept resolution number R-88-21, amending the 2021 Refuse and Recycling Fund budget, fencing and gates at the recycling center.
Misty, would you like to
Absolutely.
comment?
So this is not really a purchase at this point. This is a budget amendment. So included in the 2021 budget was the purchase of a compost screener that was approved by council. Staff is looking at some challenges that are happening at that drop-off site, and one of the biggest problems is litter. So if you think of the styrofoam collection that we have, a big gust of wind comes through and the styrofoam is going all over the place, including private property, and so our staff is now chasing after that styrofoam to go pick it up and contain it again, which is, you know, not good because you're littering, but then also the staff resources to go and collect it again. So instead of doing that compost screener, which is still an important project, but staff thinks this fencing and gates is a higher priority project from their view, which will put up a fence similar to what you would see at a landfill, kind of, so it's a little bit more enclosed area. It would catch that debris. And then also putting up gates. Right now, the drop-off site has policies associated with it, but it's more or less open. At some point, we may need to restrict hours on that because of different inappropriate dumping that is happening. So that's one of the solutions we're looking at. So since we're putting up the fencing, putting up the gates at the same time makes sense. So while the original budgeted project is important, staff believes that this other project is more important. Once you approve this budget amendment, because the purchase is less than $25,000, you guys won't see the purchase again. Because remember, it's just if it's $25,000 or more. But because it wasn't budgeted, that's why it has to come to you guys for approval first.
Discussion. Go ahead, Gabriella.
I was just going to say, we discussed this last night in Resource Conservation Commission, and Claudia was there, and she said that it's been a real time suck for the staff because they're going out collecting litter, and our staff already has, a lot on their plate. So that was kind of one of the things that really swayed me in favor of this resolution.
I have one comment. I noticed I stopped one late afternoon and the entire bin for styrofoam was not there. I'm assuming they took it away because it was full. I'm guessing the next day they brought in another one. That hasn't been permanent that they've removed it. I haven't been back since. That was probably just, I was correct in my summation or my thought that they took it away to empty and then they brought it back. I imagine a city would hear something about it, or Public Works if it wasn't returned.
You know what, I am not certain. I haven't heard that it's been taken away, but I will follow up and get back to you guys.
Okay, it wasn't there at all. Yeah, go ahead.
As far as I know, the only change that's happened to the recycling program recently is we eliminated plastic bag recycling in your home recycling bin. But I haven't heard anything about styrofoam stopping, so I assume it was just, obviously it would be good to check, but my
Yeah.
assumption is that it hasn't changed.
Okay.
I'll check.
Yes, Jim.
Misty, how far away are we from actually restricting access? Because actually, I find it kind of interesting that it's open, like 24/7, no hours or anything else like that. So is there a timeline to get that done?
So it's a debate, I would say, at this point, and it'll end up being a policymaker decision, I would guess, in the relatively near future. We did restrict the policy to at least eliminate the commercial yard waste drop-off, but there's not that strong of a mechanism to ensure that policy is being followed at this point. So we're discussing different ways to see that those policies are met. That the fencing and the gates and the restricting hours is definitely one of the items that's being talked about as an option to restrict it, but ultimately it'll end up being the policymaker's decision if that's the route you want to take. The only finance caveat I would make is, we do have people accessing our drop-off site that are not City of Fitchburg residents, and there's a cost to our residents for that. But I do think we also need to keep in mind that cost benefit. So we could install a very expensive system to make sure that it's just Fitchburg residents. But if that cost outweighs the extra cost we have to pay by having other people do it, it's just a factor that we'll need to weigh. So.
Okay.
Go ahead, Gabriella.
Just a quick comment in regards to that. We have been discussing it in Resource Conservation Commission, and back in December, Claudia actually there was some extra staff time, so they went and they actually checked people's IDs for a whole day just to get some data about how many people were outside of the City of Fitchburg. And I don't recall exactly what those numbers are, but that exists. And we were planning to have a more deep conversation in Resource Conservation Commission about it this coming year. And recycling in general is expensive for the city, but it's also a very well appreciated service. So it's a balancing act. But yeah, I think we're going to have a more deeper discussion about it, and I can let you know when we're going to talk about that in RCC.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, more of a financial question. Now the funds were originally allocated for the compost screener, but we're discussing and it will probably pass that we should move the dollars to this particular project. How does the compost screener get back into the CIP? Is it still sitting there and it'll just be included in the next budget process to pick up so that we account for the screener and that we will? You've mentioned that it is an important project. I want to make sure it's not taken off the table and then it's forgotten about, I guess.
Exactly. So it will need to be a new request. It doesn't automatically carry over because at this point, if this is approved, it's gone away at that point. So staff will need to re-request it as a part of the 2022 budget and CIP process.
Okay, so it will be staff that will make that
Yep.
request all over again. Okay.
Yep.
Good. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? The resolution passes. Item 6E, under the action items. Is there a resolution? Is there a motion for Resolution R-86-21 authorizing the release of the city's right to levy deferred special assessments?
I move approval.
Misty, would you like to comment?
Absolutely. So this is a TID item. So TID 4, which is the area by City Hall and then goes up to the interchange that we put in over at Highway 14. When we put in the interchange, we diverted a little bit from the city's normal practice, which meant that the city actually paid for that interchange to go in. And then the developer promised that they would have enough increment for the TID to be able to pay that back. And the way that the city helped ensure that is we included in that development agreement that if that increment wasn't generated, we would be able to go back and specially assess the cost of that interchange on the variety of projects that we were expecting to come through. So the language is included in that current development agreement. And then in order to sell any properties that were covered by that agreement, they needed permission from the city in order to sell that property. At this point, TID 4, the one that we're talking about, is very successful. We expect to close it in the next year or so, depending on timing of some projects. The increment was generated as expected, and we do not need to levy special assessments to pay ourselves back for it. So the city feels comfortable waiving that right to assess via this resolution. It came up because of the Quick Trip project that's coming in. In order to sell land to Quick Trip for that project to continue, they needed to go through this exercise because of that original development agreement.
Okay. Are there any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The resolution passes. The next action item under item 6, let's see, none of F. A motion for Resolution R-95-21, amending the 2021 park fee budget, NSGC Shed Addition. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Okay. Misty, would you like to comment?
So I will start, but then Scott Endel is here. He's our Parks Director. He'll be able to jump in more. But first, this is another one of those budget amendments like we talked about before. So this is not actually initiating the purchase. It is authorizing staff to continue with the purchasing process because it was not budgeted for 2021. And then NSGC is the Nine Springs Golf Course. That's what that is. So with that, I will let Scott take over.
Thank you, Misty. And this is an acceleration. There was a shed addition project scheduled for 2026, but with the development in the area, we have been hearing some resident concerns, and I believe in your packet there's some pictures of this area where there's equipment sitting outside. So it has become a little bit unsightly, along with the maintenance equipment is sitting outside. So we're proposing to move the $21,000 that was allocated in the 2026 CIP to 2021, along with the addition of $54,000 for a total of $75,000. The addition to the shed is going to be about 675 square feet. And we've had some estimates of $100 per square foot for this addition. And basically the construction is going to be the same construction that we currently have there with a tongue and groove wood siding and concrete floor. So it'll just basically be an extension of the shed to the east. The dollars that we're drawing from are from the Quarry Ridge Retirement Community Development. I will note that there's $562,900 in that account that we're drawing from. And I might, and Misty might be able to comment to this too, that This is part of Act 243. If you recall, there was legislation that was adopted that put a time limit on when dollars can be expended out of these accounts, and this is the one that is the oldest, if I understand correctly. So that was Misty's recommendation on why we draw it from that account.
Further comment, Misty, or?
Just to clarify a little bit, so it is the oldest after the law change that's not already planned for a different project. So it's, yes, that's true with a little bit of caveat. And so it is 7 or 10 years, depending on whether or not council passes a resolution, that we have to spend that money. So we're spending the oldest new stuff first before we go to the old stuff before the law change, because we have more flexibility there.
Questions? Yes, Jim.
So I take it there was no other priority projects that this money could have been used for?
Well, Scott, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, not at this point. Yeah, I would say not at this point, and that there isn't any projects that were scheduled to utilize these dollars. I know we're working on the hub project, so that may be a project that some of these funds could potentially be used for, but at this point, there is no specific project that these funds have been allocated for.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions? Yes, Gabriella.
One of the things, so I don't play golf, so I just looked up the Nine Springs pay schedule because I was curious. I'm just wondering in terms of, because residents that use the Nine Springs golf course, even though it's a park, had to pay to use it. What do those fees go to? Because it seems like maybe some of this should come out of that fee since it's serving just the golf course. That occurs to me, but I'm curious what you'd have to say about that.
I can take it, or do you want to, Scott?
Go ahead, Misty.
So the city doesn't operate the golf course on our own. So we hire a management company to do that, and we pay them an amount per year in order to provide that service. But in addition to that, they are able to retain all of those golf fees that are collected. So the money that's collected for the round of golf, as well as the city's taxpayer subsidy, goes to pay for the service of running the course, keeping it maintained, that type of a thing. And then under that contract, the city is responsible for the capital purchases, basically to have it established as a golf course. And I think there's some nuances in the contract, but this is something that would fall on the city's responsibility if it was something that we wanted to do. And then the reason why park fees are allowed is because the golf course is accessible to everybody across the community. It's the only golf course that we have. So the people that are in that new development, once it's established, in theory would be able to come and would utilize that golf course. So that's why park fees are appropriate in this situation.
Gabriella.
Can you utilize it if you don't pay? Is there any way to use the park if you don't pay a fee?
Scott, that's a you question.
Well, in actually, Gabrielle, during the summer months, typically that's the only use of the facility. I know during the winter months, we do have people or residents that will use, there is some topography at the site, so they may use it for sledding. They do some cross-country skiing and those kinds of things, snowshoeing in the park. We did try to do a skating rink at one point in time, but that's a good point in that, as we continue to do activities and improvements in this area, the idea of creating, I think this could be an ideal winter type of facility for our community. Like I say, skating and actually the idea of a potential covered skating rink in the hub project is one of the things that we're considering. But certainly cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, tobogganing, those kinds of things for winter activities. I would suspect that, if we would at some point create some better trails on the outside of the golf course, I'm thinking that those may be available, early in the morning, before the golfers get there, or later on in the evening when it's too dark to golf. But yeah, typically it's a sole, it's a sole use park or facility.
Additional questions? Gabriella?
Yeah, I do have one just follow up. I guess I saw the photos. I appreciate that it's like not the prettiest area and that people want to see it covered up. But the justification that I read in the resolution was that it didn't look pretty. I didn't read the justification that it was like to protect the equipment and to make it last longer, although I assume that that's an ancillary benefit. But I guess I'm resistant to this like 75,000 is a lot in my mind. And I guess I just don't like that we'll spend this money and we have not yet built a park in that community. Because really it's a city park, but you can only use it if you pay. And until we build the hub and know that we can fully fund the hub, I don't personally like using this funding to pay for a shed that serves a park that people can only use if they pay. So I'm leaning towards no. I'm willing to hear other opinions from the committee if you have any, but that's where I stand at the moment.
Well, I guess as a follow-up, I don't know, I saw the pictures and I have some concerns about vehicles sitting out. And I don't think at any point in time that anything that's motorized should be sitting out in the elements. And secondly, it didn't have a very nice look, to be quite honest. To me, it looks like that shed definitely needs to be expanded and care for what it needs to do. But I'm also open to other suggestions or thoughts. Go ahead, Jim.
And I somewhat share your concerns, Gabriella. And that's why I asked the question, were there any other priorities? Because what Gabriella was saying, I'm still trying to work through my head. We say community park, yet access is restricted. And then you got a third party coming in, obviously making a profit from this. And so I really don't know what to think about this right now. And, it was that discussion on park fees that we had. So I don't know. And I guess, Misty, I don't know if you could tell me more about how these park fees work, because I was somewhat confused when I did look at the meeting about park fees, and they had the discussion about what would be available for, the hub in the community center.
Yeah, so another use of this funding would be the hub, phase 2 at least, if it's a more broad thing. When it comes to park fees, the key is that the development that paid the park fees, so that Corey Ridge Retirement Community, I think is the name of it, this one, the people that are in that development need to be the ones that are likely to use the park. So because, again, the golf course is the only one we have, it draws from across the community. That's why, even though the development is on the other side of town, it makes sense that those fees could be allocated to this project. But you're absolutely right. Hub Phase 2 is another project that's in the queue to be used to pay for with park fees. The risk, of course, is if there's no more park fees to pay for it and the Phase 2 doesn't have the funding, that would be a risk. However, in the CIP right now, I believe the council approved a borrow for whatever that difference is. Not that that's a great answer, but I think the project would likely still be able to happen. I also suspect, based on other projects I've heard that are kind of in the pipeline, that there probably will be more park fees being collected between now and when Phase 2 happens. But again, that's a risk. We don't know that for sure. So I can definitely appreciate what you're saying, but this would be an eligible use. Whether it's the priority use is what you guys have to decide.
I have a question. Now, you mentioned earlier that the city is responsible for the capital assets, or I guess that's what I'm going to call. So the shed would be one. Is there other facilities at this location that we're also responsible for? I mean, there must be I'm not a golfer either, so I'm not familiar with the location. There must be an office or where one collects the fees and does everything else to run the golf course. We're responsible for that facility as well, I'm guessing?
So we are responsible for the shelter. I know we just did an addition, but Scott, I think you'd probably be a better person to answer the rest of the amenities there.
Right, and actually that facility is the clubhouse where they collect the fees, and we recently did an addition to that clubhouse, which created a gathering place, and we were able to utilize park fees for that improvement. So that's another, we've got bridges. There's about 4 or 5 different bridges that route in the park that goes over the tributaries that run through the course. So I guess those would be the other capital amenities that are included in the golf course facility.
Does the greens count as well? I mean, and grass, and other than, they're maintaining it, but I mean, are we responsible for any type of replacement? We're probably getting off course here, but I'm just curious as to how big of a picture this is.
Yeah, typically, Dan, the operator, he'll do the golf tee boxes improvements. He'll do the green improvements. There's a putting green at the area. He'll maintain the fairways and those kinds of things. The things the hard structures that Misty is alluding to is the clubhouse with the expanded gathering area, along with this utility shed that Dan utilizes to store his equipment. That is Dan's equipment, actually, that he utilizes to maintain the course. I will share a little bit of history. At one point in time, there was a discussion on when we decided that we were going to pay Dan. In the past, there was history where the golf course actually paid the city for leasing the facility, but that it became financially undoable for the contractor. So we did decide at some point before it was decided to continue on with the golf course operation, the idea of creating a community park, if you would, that had different amenities, including the golf course. But the council at that point in time decided that, was to remain as a golf course, but they encouraged, multiple uses of the golf course. And we've had events out there before in the past. And like I say, that kind of alludes to the winter activities where Dan could, in theory, groom trails and those kinds of things. So that's a little bit of history of the golf course. And actually, as we went through that process, if the city were to, municipally run a golf course, it would cost, a whole lot more than the dollars that we pay Dan to provide those services. So, at the end of the day, it is an investment that the council and the taxpayers make in order to be afforded the opportunity to have a golf course.
Gabriella, you have a question.
I actually just have one last statement. I've been thinking a little bit more about this, and I think, I guess, I'm probably going to vote no. The reason why is because I just don't think that in the last year it's been demonstrated to me that the city is committed to the hub as much as I want it to be. It was not in the mayor's proposed CIP last year. We had to put it in through an amendment. And that indicates to me that there is not an immediate commitment to by the city to do phase 1 and phase 2. And if that's the truth, which I don't know if it is, things can change, if it's going to require council pressure, I'm just not convinced that the money is going to necessarily be there when we get to phase 2. And I don't want to have voted for $75,000 for a shed for the golf course for a facility that can only be used by a select few that pay when that comes down to it. And that's where I am right now. So I just wanted to clarify that's where I stand, and I'm gonna vote no on this.
Maybe just as a clarification, there is $21,000 allocated already, so that those dollars are encumbered. The amendment is to add the $54,000 from the Quarry Ridge retirement to come up to the $75,000.
The amendment also includes accelerating, though, that 21,000. It's earmarked right now for 2026, and the proposal would be to spend it in 2021. So the amendment is for the full 75,000. But as Scott mentioned, part of it has kind of already been set aside.
Jim?
Is there a cheaper alternative? That maybe just, I don't know, put something out that basically is going to do the function of covering those vehicles so they're not in the elements, but, not in addition.
I can comment on that. Dan did propose to purchase a lean-to, if you would, but at that point, that proposal was, as I understand, we don't allow those types of structures to be built in the city, so that was unable to proceed. So this was our next potential course of action.
I have a couple additional questions. It is probably directed at Scott. For years, the shed has been serving its purpose. Now, all of a sudden, there are vehicles outside of the shed. What has changed that there's additional vehicles? I'll call them vehicles, lawnmowers, groomers, whatever they are. And then the other question I have is, we have pictures showing everything sitting outside, but we don't have any pictures of what's inside. I mean, I would be curious to see how congested it is inside as well. So,
And Dan has acquired some equipment over the years. In order to maintain the golf course, he needs, instead of, basically a shovel kind of thing, he's purchased some additional heavy equipment to do some of that work. And, the mowers, he's got golf carts that sit outside. I can attest that the shed is full and he definitely is in need of some additional space for storage of the equipment that he has purchased and uses to maintain the golf course.
any additional questions? Yes, Gabriella?
So the city owns that equipment?
No.
No.
No, that's Dan's equipment.
Oh, it's owned by the operator?
The only thing that the city does is we pay him an annual amount so that he provides the service to have the golf course for the community. And he's responsible for all the maintenance, paying all the staff. He does receive the green fees and the revenue. But at the end of the day, the city, this year we invest $51,000 to Dan to provide the service of a golf course to our community.
Any additional questions, discussion? Seeing none, let's put it to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
The resolution passes. Okay, moving on to the next action item, which is 6G. Do I have a motion for Resolution R-98-21, resolution authorizing First Amendment to the design contract with KL Engineering for design of County Trunk Highway MM McCoy intersection and signal improvements?
I move approval.
We have an approval. Discussion, or let me back up here. Misty,
We
please.
have Bill Bulkey joining us now,
Oh.
the Public Works Director, so I'd love to turn it over to him for that brief introduction.
Good evening. The intersection at County Highway MM and McCoy Road is under design right now with KL Engineering. We had a design contract for them to complete the plans and specifications to Department of Transportation standards for the grant that we received for that project. And during the course of that, there were some unanticipated costs that the Department of Transportation and other agencies wanted to see for safety reasons, such as more complex construction staging and detouring. Traffic signal timings were a little more complex, and it just ran, some more time to be able to accommodate those and meet those standards that were required. So this is the final change order that's being asked for the contract to complete it to those standards, as well as take the project through the bidding process to answer questions during the bidding process and anything that might come up between now and the final bids.
Is there any questions? Discussion? Hearing none. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gabriella.
I'm just a little confused because we just saw this project, it was R6221 at I think it was at the last council meeting or maybe 2 council meetings ago. And it was about a change that WISDOT was requesting. And when I was looking at, there was like a table that actually showed the costs. Because my understanding of the project is that we're only paying part of the design cost. We're not paying for the construction because that's being covered by the state through a grant. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
So based on that table that I looked at in the last one, it said that the total cost of the project was $192,851.11. But then in this resolution, it's saying that the total cost for the project is significantly lower than that, $139,920. I'm just confused about the numbers and why, like, am I looking at different numbers for the project? Because I thought there was only the design cost for the city. And I can send you I'm looking at the resolution from the Transportation and Transit Committee right now.
All right. Yeah, there's the city match that we're going for the entire project that is, okay, let me back up a second. The grant for the city is $734,000, I think it is, something like that.
Yeah.
That they're paying for. And the overall construction project is more than that. The city's required to pay 10% of that grant match plus any overages beyond that to make up the difference. And then we're splitting that cost between the city and the county for 1/3 to the city and 2/3 to the county. We are paying for the entire design cost under the city contract, but we're splitting that with the city and the county,
So
1/3, 2/3.
We're only paying 1/3 of the $139,920?
Correct.
Okay, I think that's the difference. Okay. I'm just curious what the total project cost is, because my understanding from the last time, I voted for that resolution because we were still well under the budget in the CIP, which was something like $250,000. So I'm just trying to figure out what the entire project cost is, but it looks like maybe like a $10,000 bump based on my quick calculations.
Correct, for the design part of it, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll put the resolution to vote. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The resolution passes. Moving on to the next action item. Make sure I have this correct. That's 6H. Is there a motion for Resolution R-100-21 approving amendment to construction contract with IGE for Fish Hatchery Road left turn lane reconstruction? This is a direct referral. I'm guessing Bill would comment on this?
Need a motion first.
I'm sorry.
I move approval.
Now, thank you.
Bill?
Bill?
The TID 4 expenditure period is closing on May 27th. And one of the projects that we have in there is to extend the left turn lane at East Cheryl Parkway and Fish Hatchery Road, which is associated with the development and growth, growth and development with Omega and the TID, all associated with TID 4. In order to be able to utilize that funding before the expenditure period closes, we have to have a contract with a contractor to do the work. And we worked with IGE, who is doing the Fish Hatchery Road project, as a change order to do the improvements down here at East Cheryl Parkway. And the bid was within reason that for the cost estimate. And we're asking to approve that change order for the contract. The additional work that we're going to be doing beyond the extension of the turn lane will be to actually replace the remaining turn lane with concrete that's out there and falling apart. And we will be splitting that cost 50-50 with Dane County.
Questions, discussion?
So all of this will be paid out of that TID, and we're good with that?
So not all of it. So the TID will pay for 75% of the turn lane extension, because the TID can only pay for the things that are needed due to the development within the TID. Very similar to that conversation we were having about park fees. So the left turn lane needed to be extended because of all of the development within the TID, but only, the engineer estimate was that 75% of that benefit was because of the properties within the TID. The other 25% was for the rest of the city. So it's not just people in the TID that are using that extension. So just a portion of it is being paid for out of the TID. It's available to be paid for out of the TID. The TID is very successful. This project was specifically included in the project plan because it is slightly outside the boundaries. And yes, we do have that expenditure period timing issue that we're running into now, but it was always anticipated that the TID would pay for that. And then the rest of the project is paid for by the county and the city, which was budgeted and included in the CIP. So long answer is yes.
No, thanks for the clarification.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The resolution passes. Moving on to the next action item, 6I. Is there a motion for Resolution R-101-21 approving agreement with Wisconsin Southern Railroad for rail crossing improvements at Cyene Road and Lacey Road? Direct referral.
I move approval.
And who would like to comment? Bill? Bill, please.
Yes, thank you. Similar to the previous item, there is an expenditure or within the project plan of TID 4 to improve the railroad crossing at Cyene Road and Lacey Road. And a set of money amount of money was set aside to do this improvement within the plan. What we're doing is similar to that. It's just we're trying to get the funds obligated so that we can expend those with the construction project when it's completed next year. And we got an estimate from the railroad to do the improvements. We're going to be doing some widening at that location, installing a median, as well as extending the gates and the lights that are required to be there. And that estimate came in at, I think it's in the packet, at $660,000 to that amount to do that work. And we're just trying to reserve those funds to be able to do that work next year through being paid for through the TID.
A couple things I'd like to add, if I may. So this is another project that was specifically identified in that TID project plan amendment, was for that intersection. The cost did end up coming in quite a bit higher if you combine the two. So it's about 1.3 million. We had 800,000 planned for in the TID project plan. But that's okay. One, because the TID is successful and there's enough cash within the TID to pay for it. And then number two, we have flexibility within other lines of that project plan that for projects that didn't happen. So it is okay to go over on this particular project. And I do think it's important to be clear that it was always planned to be done under the project plan, because it is a big dollar amount, and to an extent it feels like we're rushing it at the end, but it was always planned to be done. The overlying jurisdictions were aware. They approved this project being done by the TID and paid for 100% by the TID.
Questions? Gabriella?
I'm just curious about the overall purpose of this improvement in particular. It says that it's so we qualify for a quiet zone, or is it a safety? Like, what is the improvement? What does it do for the intersection? How does it affect How do the changes affect the crossing?
What it does is it improves the safety for the quiet zone. With the median, it prevents cars from going around the gates. It improves the gates that are installed at the location, and they will have to be lengthened to prevent the cars from going around them. So because we are widening the road in this area for turn lane, we have to basically redo the intersection so that it complies with that quiet zone with the median and the gates and lights.
Any other questions? Hearing none, well, let's put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The resolution passes. Moving on to the next action item, 6J. Is there a motion for Resolution R-102-21, approving agreement with MG&E for undergrounding overhead power lines associated with rail crossing improvements at Cyene Road and Lacey Road? Direct referral.
I move approval.
Who would like to address? Would you,
Let's do Bill
pointing to
again.
Bill, right? Bill, please.
All right, similar to the previous items regarding the improvements at this intersection with the railroad, we are looking to underground the power lines in the vicinity of the intersection. This is mainly due to the gates that are going to be installed there being too close to the power lines, the railroad having a desire to bury those lines, because if a power pole is hit in that area, falling across the tracks and disrupting service. So we are looking to have a contract with MG&E for the undergrounding in that area. We're also doing some realignment of Cyene roads, so the poles that are out there are not going to be in the right place, and they're going to have to move them anyway. So they are going to discount the relocation of those poles from the overall cost. We're looking for approval just to have the contract available to have those funds set aside for next year when the construction takes place. And it was part of the railroad crossing improvements that Misty had mentioned.
I have a couple questions, but anybody else have questions at this point? Gabriella? Okay. This question, of course, is for Bill. You mentioned discounted. Do you know offhand, and it may be in the documents, I just don't see it. Do you know what kind of discount we're receiving? Because I'm assuming, since they're aerial, they want to stay aerial, but we're thinking for maybe from a safety standpoint or for the best interest that it would be placed to bury those facilities underground.
Yeah, we did not include that within the full construction cost estimate as a contingency, but what we've seen is in the range of around $100,000 maybe that could be discounted from that project.
Sure. And having experience with relocating facilities, it certainly seems to be in line. What about with the other facilities that are there? I saw cable TV, I thought. Do we have to be concerned with that? Or AT&T, I suspect, is buried. I saw those on the print.
Typically what we're going to see there is a joint relocation with MG&E. So all the other facilities will put their conduit in at the same time. So there's going to be minimal, excavation costs and installation costs. It's just the material costs primarily, and then some of their pedestal boxes and junction boxes that are going to need to be relocated from above poles to underground or on the ground. We don't have estimates from those, but that's why the contingency is in there. That we'd be using, maybe some of that refunded money for relocation.
Sure, and I would guess if they're already in road right-of-way, there wouldn't be a cost to the city to begin with. If they're in road right-of-way, we would ask them to relocate unless it was a private easement. But,
correct.
yeah. Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. The resolution passes.
Chair, would you like to do that road construction update now since Bill is here, before we go to the last resolution?
Oh, yes. We'll jump back up under the action items. And Bill, could you give us an update on the road construction?
Sure. Yeah, I was having some major computer issues with emails and logging in, so glad to be here now. Back to the road construction, yeah, Fish Hatchery Road, we're well underway. They're putting down some base course out there around the intersection, building the wall at McCoy. Utilities, and stormwater's going in, a few water extensions and things like that going on, but no issues so far. They're on track to make their deadline, and we're still looking at probably a July switchover. The lights on the north part up there, they should arrive to the city. We got an estimate of June 10th now, so within a month we'll be putting up the street lights up there on the north part and wrapping up that section up there. The landscaping is going in up there, so it's starting to look pretty nice up in that area. The northeast water main loop along West Clayton Road and MM is ongoing. We're probably about 75% of the construction completed there. So we're looking to get that wrapped up within the next month or so. The subdivisions that we have over on Crescent Crossing, Stoner Prairie over by Lacey and Seminole, curb and gutters going in on Stoner Prairie. Crescent Crossing is finishing up their grading. So they're looking to have, some their lots for sale, either this summer in Stoner Prairie or later in the fall for Crescent Crossing. Bay Fields is starting up the 5th phase of that, final phase of the plat. So they're looking to install, I think it's another 30 some lots and homes there. So the utilities are going in over there. There's a contract for our chip sealing that you'll see tonight. Our resurfacing will be going out for bid shortly for the projects there. And gosh, what else we got going on? I can't remember. So I guess if you got any questions on any of the other construction, just let me know. This week on McKee Road between Commerce and Seminole, they're going to be installing some of the green epoxy for the crosswalks for the trails crossings at the intersections. So there might be some traffic control that you'll be seeing through that area there down to 1 lane. So just be aware that, you're not going to be utilizing all the lanes through there while they're putting that down.
I have one question. The flashing lights at McKee and Commerce, is there a period of time that those flash until you activate them? Just out of curiosity, when will they be activated?
At McKee and Commerce, they should be activated already.
Is
there another intersection you were thinking of?
I think of that intersection, there's new lights at that McKee and Commerce. They're flashing yellow.
Is that the one by
Over at
Barriques?
Marketplace, that's the intersection. That's the preemption signal that we put in for the fire department. They only flash yellow and are only activated for red to stop the vehicles on McKee Road when the fire department activates their doors. So when they have an emergency call, they push the button, the doors go up, it turns the light red on McKee Road so that the fire department can access and turn onto McKee Road.
So that they were never intended, they're only intended for the fire department, emergency vehicles.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Jim has a question.
Can I ask how much did that cost? I mean, fire engines have big sirens, air horns, and all that other kind of stuff, and they get through other intersections. And the amount of times they actually use that, and it just seems like it would be a lot of cost to that.
Yeah, I'd have to get back to you on that cost. I do have an itemized cost on what that was. but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head for the construction, but I'll get that information to you. And typically on the side streets that, like you mentioned, we do have some preemption on the signal heads themselves. So the fire department vehicles, they have a strobe on their vehicle that will activate a preemption and turn the signal green for the direction they're traveling. So a lot of those intersections have that in place where they will turn the lights green before they get there, just to let you know about that.
Yes, and I was wrong. It was not Commerce. It was Marketplace. I'm just looking at Google Maps now. So that's my mistake. Any other questions? Okay. We have another resolution to address. Moving on to that particular resolution. Let me see if I can jump over my screen here. That action item is 6K. Is there a motion for Resolution R-105-21, amending the 2021 General Fund budget, redirecting Fitchburg Fund donations and funding to the Teen Center study, direct referral?
I move approval.
Discussion, conversation?
I can start if you don't mind.
Yes, go ahead.
This is very similar to another, actually it's a twin of a resolution that has been voted on by the council in the past. We do have one update though. I checked with my team this morning, and if you include the $3,000 of private donations that were for the Fitchburg Fund that was identified in the resolution, we've also gotten another $1,750 of donations through this morning. So really, if we are going to proceed with this resolution, we actually only need to transfer $10,250 of the property tax levy money that was supposed to go to Fitchburg Fund to the Teen Center instead. It doesn't necessarily hurt anything to keep this as it is, but if you wanted to keep some of the tax money in the Fitchburg Fund, you would have a little bit of flexibility there.
What's that number again? Sorry,
Yeah, so we collected $3,000 for the Fitchburg Fund, which those donors have said they feel comfortable with us transitioning those over. Plus we got $1,750 in donations specifically for the Teen Center through this morning. So that's a total of $4,750. We budgeted to get $15,000. So the difference that we need to reallocate from tax funding of the Fitchburg Fund is $10,250.
I'm just going to put it out there. I have some concerns with this. And basically is because we had a budget process that basically takes months to complete. That process was voted on, the budget was voted on. And we have a situation where an alder did not meet the expectations of what was supposed to take place in this resolution, getting that money. So it comes to the council, and basically as an amendment, and I think this is basically a continuation of a budget discussion that I was not a part of, and it gets voted down. And then you get a new council, and the second meeting of the new council, we're bringing this back again. And I know you can do it. It's no problem with that. But this takes me back to the 2019 with the project that was supposed to go to on Fishatry Road. And I bring that up because I was on that side of the table when something was voted down and it was brought back and then approved. Now, at that time, two citizens did sue the city, and it was reversed. And it was reversed because it wasn't properly noticed, but it was something that Judge Elke said that really stuck with me. And it was just like when people think a process is done, they don't expect it to come back again. And I can understand that, vote it down. You want to bring it back again the first time. But to say that now I want to bring it back when we weren't involved in the budget process for a second time, only because you have new members that's only been on the council for about a month, I really think that that diminishes trust. And that's what happened with that whole first situation back in 2019. You should have heard the gasps in the gallery. I was there. People were like, why is this even coming back again? And now it seems like we're doing the same thing. I didn't like the answer, so new council, I'll bring it back. And I just have some, personally, my deal, I just have some issues with that. Because you can do it, obviously, but being a former law enforcement officer, the Supreme Court says that there's a lot of things that we can do. And, when I'm talking to officers, I say, yeah, you can do it, but is it the right thing to do? And for me, I don't think this is the right thing to do. I think this is just going to diminish trust in the community. But that's just my personal view. I'm not, making assumptions about anybody else. This is just me. So I'll just leave it at that.
I'll just say that the difference, so after the last discussion, I support this resolution. I support the study, and I think the benefit of this particular decision is that it accelerates the timeline on the study so we can get it done versus having to wait for more donations to come in. After that discussion, I wrote a check and donated to and it clearly, initiated some more checks. So the difference between this consideration last time is that we have made up the gap, because last time we voted on this, there was not enough money to move forward even with the resolution. So this time it's like we have more donations and we can move this forward. Wade could put an RFP tomorrow if we move this money into from this fund into the new one. So I think that's the difference this time around. But I guess it just in my mind, the money that's sitting in this fund, this usage fits it. It fits with it. And now that we're at the point where we can move forward, immediately if we move this funding in, I think that speed has value in revisiting this. Because I just, in my opinion, COVID has widened the opportunity gap in a very significant way. And I think the faster we can do this study and determine what's possible and then look at how we can work it into our budget, the better. So I appreciate process arguments. I think that there is importance in the process. I guess I would just say that in this particular case, for this particular project, the spirit is good. The donors that gave that money said that they're up for it, and we can start tomorrow. And that, I think, is worth it. And I think the community, based on the conversations during CIP, during budget, during the people that came out last time, I think the community will support it. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, the budget amendment last year, that $15,000 was money outside of the organization, or outside of taxpayer dollars. And it was nonprofit or business or from the community. And we went down this road last time, a month ago, and I voted in favor. I've done some serious thinking as well. And I'm probably going to support it again just because it's a good project, and that's what we need eventually. Let's see what the study has to say. But I can assure you, there's some real frustration on my part as to where this is going. So I'll be interested to see, if this project moves forward, I'll be interested to see what the study actually says. Jim?
And I want to make it clear, I'm not saying it's not a good project. I think it's a good project. Healthy Neighborhood Initiative says that the area needs resources, and I can appreciate that. But even looking at some of the past meetings, I think sometimes the optimism, the aspirational aspect of this, and enthusiasm is overshadowing some of the fiscal realities also. And when you have a person that says that I can raise thousands of dollars in a few months, and then we get into this point where it was like we got to raise $11,000 and that still didn't happen, that's concerning. It's a red flag. And I've been around a long time, and I've seen projects that basically, because of speed, improper planning, a lot of enthusiasm, that fail. And you can look at Tree Lane, okay? Affordable housing, yeah, let's go. You know, we got the money, let's go. And then once it's built, it's more police calls in that area, in that one section of Tree Lane than the whole West District. And it's because it wasn't properly planned. And then what happens? Who gets the black eye? Affordable housing. Not that they rushed into it. It's that, well, it wasn't properly planned. And like I said, I've been around a long time. Been black for a long time. And I've seen these processes sometimes come to fruition and they fail. And I don't want this to fail, because I think more can actually be done. So that's where I'm coming from. I don't want people to think that I don't believe in this, but I also believe that the process has to be one that's open and transparent. And like I said, I think when people see that something is closed and it comes right back like a month later because we got a new council, I think that's problematic. That's all I'm saying for me.
Further discussion? Gabriella?
I'm just curious. And this is, I guess, mostly to Jim. I'm curious because I've also heard, I've had conversations about this, but 3,000 of that Fitchburg Fund dollars are from donors that were solicited by the United Way. And that my understanding is that they communicated directly with those donors and they are okay with their money going to the fund. So it seems like those individuals gave that money. It's coming from outside of the city. How do you feel about those monies going towards this study? Because if we can put that 3,000 towards it, that goes a long way. Then we're like 4,750 away, and that's going to be a lot easier to finish, to close that gap. And that is coming from outside the organization.
I think I don't want people to miss the point here. Like I said, I just think there's some red flags as we go along with this. And I think it's because there's a lot of enthusiasm about it, which is great. But some of the fiscal realities is what I'm concerned about. And like I said, if we can't raise $10,000, $11,000 in a few months, what does that mean when we actually get these things going? And we're saying we're going to do the hub, the second portion of it. All these things we're saying we're going to just get donations. And I don't know where all the donations are going to come from. Because you look at the CIP, it looks like we're double dipping, from CDBG, county, these organizations. And I'm just like, these are going kind of simultaneously. And I mean, I think, and I talked to Joe about this, and I just think it needs to be a reset, basically, and that's what I believe. Because like I said, I don't want this to fail. And sometimes I don't see the rush, maybe because I've been around a long time, seen a lot fail, seen a lot are good. But I just think we're just rushing a little bit too fast with this. And we just need to do a reset. That's all.
Any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, I'll put it to a vote. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
The resolution passes. Moving on to announcements. The next meeting, finance meeting, is May 25th, 2021. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Passes. Adjournment is at 6:25 PM.